Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. What is the most lawful evil thing you have witnessed? I'm a nurse. Walked into a hospice patient's room full of family fighting about inheritances and the will over their dying relative. One of the visitors called me back into the room and asked if there was any way to speed the process along. She asked if things would go faster if they put a magnet over the patient's pacemaker, an effort to deactivate the device. She went on to explain that they were from out of town. They'd bought tickets to a live show and were worried about missing it. Basically, it was taking too long for their family member to die and it was ruining their evening. All of this was within earshot of my super sweet patient. My blood was boiling. Are healthcare workers not allowed to ask the family to leave? Because if I was in your shoes they would have rode my boot out the door. Probably elsewhere. It was against policy for me to do that. I encouraged them to go to their show and reported them to the hospice and my supervisor. I'm not a gambler, so I don't know if these are all over the place, but the only time I've ever been in a casino, I saw a cash machine that would give you an instant second mortgage on your house. This was in Reno in 1989 at a family reunion. I stood there looking at it and realized I was standing in front of evil incarnate. Holy shit, that's predatory as duck. Out of cash? Bet your house. My inner monologue sounded like a vending machine from Borderlands. I am legally obligated to tell you, I ain't a real doctor. Civil asset forfeiture. $25,000 was legally taken from my grandfather who has Alzheimer's but wasn't diagnosed at the time and could tell the cops why he had that much money on him to buy a new truck, because he forgot. The cops just took the money and left without any charges being filed. We didn't find out until a year later when the police department sent a receipt of seizure to his house and we found it when we were cleaning. Couldn't do anything about it because the police department already spent the money. Could be an elder abuse case. Lawyer up and go after the police. With civil forfeiture, the case doesn't involve the person who had the money. It involves only the town. Really just the police department who sees the money, and money itself. In order to get your money back, you have to offer absolute proof that the money was not going to be used for anything illegal. If this sounds like an impossible burden, you're right. It's designed so that the money can remain safe in the hands of the police fund. They could walk into court with documentation showing the man had an appointment 1 hour after the time of the seizure to buy a truck for the exact amount of the cash that was seized. But that wouldn't prove he wasn't going to buy drugs. So the defendant, literally named as amount in cash, loses the case and the money stays with the police, who likely already spent it on superfluous things. There's no elder abuse when you're arresting money. This world sickens me. I sell car parts. I am a very small player in a fairly niche market which contains a couple of other small players and 2 big players. One of the big players collapsed owing a lot of people money. Very unfortunate. It happens. The administrators were called in and the owner issued an emotional message on Facebook saying how sorry he was. Sickness in the family. Very sad. etc. But not to worry. The business has $400,000 in new stock on the shelf and the administrators will sort it all out. But later, it turns out that he knew he was about to fold but continued taking people's money, even though he had zero intention or capability of supplying them. Transferred the second-hand parts side of the business into a new business which his father opened in the same name, at the same address. The new business also scored the website. Somehow worked out a deal with the administrators whereby the $400,000 in new stock was purchased by the new business for $14.50 because the new business would not give the administrators access to the websites to identify any of these specialty parts. He apparently intends to go back into business, but since all the people he owes money to are going to get pennies in the dollar, it would be incredible if anyone trusts the family again. This sounds like blatant fraud, all because someone does something like this, and they aren't in jail, doesn't necessarily make it legal. It's common in construction, where companies fail, but the owner sets up a new one and buys all the equipment for pennies on the dollar. Folks who know their way around bankruptcy 363 sales can make a good living bidding against them. Woman at her best friend's funeral, who also was a serial sewer, was in the funeral procession when she stopped her car suddenly. The parents of the recently deceased were in the car behind her and bumped her bumper from behind. You know how slowly those processions drive. The woman sued the parents for back and neck injuries and won. Last postcard we got from this woman was a pic of her dancing it up in Greece. Her family won't even let her come to visit on their properties anymore for fear she'd fall and sue. What a piece of work. Edit. Sorry, this post was badly worded. The woman who sued was a serial suer, not her dead friend. I see the postcards because I'm a distant relative of the suing pose woman. This happened a long time ago, but is family law now to warn family members not to let her on your property, as she travels a lot and will pop into town unannounced every now and then. Everyone who still talks to her insists on meeting her at a restaurant. Is it possible to delete a person? You'll need the Infinity Gauntlet. Or a good-sized rock. This is more corporate evil than anything else. Had a customer. We are a small business making super specialty products. Put down $30k. Take delivery of our product. Then I think it will be cheaper just to sue you than to pay you the remaining $30k. Of course I thought. No way. We have all the signed paperwork and everything. 3 months later he got to keep our product without paying us. What were the effects? Well, due to legal fees etc., which we had to carry, and the fact that down payments go to suppliers, my partners and I had to open up our personal bank accounts to keep the company afloat. All of our employees got paid, but we the owners had to forego salaries until it was settled. And because word gets around, we had to deal with that too. Total bullshit. Edit. Thanks for all the comments. It's been a fun conversation. Hopefully you all can learn from my mistake. I'm legitimately curious about this and would love more details. Why couldn't you sue them for breach of contract? They could, but good lawyer would drag them into red over it. You need either escrow or contract insurance and business insurance. There's something wrong with the law if good lawyers can make it prohibitively expensive for people to insist that they be paid for services goods rendered. A company I used to work for went bust because the owner was staying sloppy drunk and gambling all the money away. He came in one Monday morning and told everybody to pack up their personal stuff and leave. I gave my notice a couple of months earlier and actually received my vacation pay and final paycheck. Nobody else got another dime and payday was supposed to be Wednesday for the last 2 weeks. I felt really bad for everyone except my piece of shit boss. He interviewed at my new company and when they asked me about him I suggested they not hire him. They didn't. I don't know where you live but here in Canada the government help you. The place where I was working last year got closed without a notice. We came on Sunday to do our normal shifts and the boss was like, "Surprise mother ducker, we're closing today." After some paperworks and a few weeks without incomes the government gave each one of us our paychecks, our vacation and almost $1,500 compensation. I guess it's different everywhere. All the states are different here but generally we do have unemployment for if something like this were to happen. Still not right to get the shaft on the hours worked before closing, though. I recently saw a post in r/legaladvice where a deaf man makes a living by going to bars events and suing because they don't have a translator for sign language. There was a lawyer here in Texas that was a retired army officer and a disabled veteran. He made hundreds of thousands of dollars by sitting at home searching the internet and sending EDA violation letters to small chiropractors, pharmacists, and doctor offices that didn't have options on its website for vision impaired people. After a while, he got greedy and upped his game, sending out hundreds of letters across the state. An attorney in Austin, Jim Harrington, stumbled across his scheme and started defending the small businesses pro bono. He ended up getting a $300,000 attorney's fee award against the guy and, based on the guy's conduct during and prior to the Austin attorney's lawsuit, the state bar in Texas Supreme Court stepped in and yanked his law license. I got involved when my client's small husband and wife chiropractor firm brought me one of his letters. Quick Google search led me to the guy in Austin and he just added my clients to his lawsuit as additional plaintiffs. Xan.com link. Xan.com link. Jim Harrington quickly became my hero. That's a great story. I hate seeing people use their prior service like that. I read that one. My take on it is that it's not a reasonable accommodation when a deaf person shows up partway through an event and says, "Get me an interpreter right now." Unfortunately, it's usually cheaper to settle out of court than it is to take it to trial. My next door neighbor had a foster daughter. She was trying to adopt her. The mother heard about the adoption and decided she suddenly wanted her kid back. After a few parenting classes and drug tests, the little girl was forcibly removed by the courts and put back in her mother's care, even though her mom was a drug addicted piece of shit who hadn't seen her child for over almost 2 years and had previous cases with Child Protective Services. Close to a month later, the mom's boyfriend raped and killed the little girl. Edited for wording. Saw in the news where a lesbian couple adopted a baby girl, but Bierman was allowed to revoke the adoption 2 months later. A week later, Bierman's boyfriend strangled the baby to death for crying. My parents adopted a little girl and Bierman revoked the adoption the day of the deadline. We speculate she used my parents to pay for prenatal care and infant care, but that's impossible to prove. Either way, my mom had a major depressive episode after that which she didn't recover from for years. I was watching this on Louis Theroux last week. Makes me so sad for all the people who just want a baby to love and people take the piss. Join our community Discord, link in description. Girl in high school had a mad ex decide to post the nudes she sent him on her Facebook page and tag the entire school on the posts. She went to the police about it and they told her they could prosecute the guy, but she would also be prosecuted for producing and distributing child porn. Does that also apply when the child is herself? Yes, actually. I've seen a girl get tried as an adult for possession of child pornography. Photos of herself. We're going to acknowledge you as an adult while acknowledging that you're child. Edited for accuracy. One of my friends owes almost $50,000 in student loans that he doesn't remember taking out. The reason he doesn't remember taking them out is because his school, which was a for-profit college that has since closed, convinced him to sign a document when he first enrolled at age 17 which essentially gave them the right to take out loans on his behalf in order to pay his tuition. They didn't really explain to him what the document was. They just got him to sign it amongst a flurry of paperwork. The school then took out several private loans with an exorbitant interest rate, and my friend just started getting letters out of the blue the year after he graduated. When he was in school, whenever these loans would show up on his student portal, they were named a confusing code number, like X4,357,545HFY5 or something like that, and classified as financial aid. So he thought he was getting financial aid. Apparently this has happened to a lot of people, but he was told that there's nothing he can do about it, especially since the school has closed. I'm not sure about the precise legality, but he contacted multiple entities to discuss it and all of them said there's nothing he can do because he signed a contract willingly. This doesn't feel like it should be legal, but the attorneys say that there's nothing they can do. He even spoke to somebody who works for the private loan company. The representative felt really bad for him, helped him drastically reduce his monthly fee to a payable amount, said that the same thing actually happened to her. She owes $10,000, and there's nothing she can do about it either. In the US a 17-year-old can't enter into a contract. True. I remember reading a story once on Not Always Right about a teacher who had their students sign a contract that if they were caught on their phones in class, the phone would be taken and held until the end of the day. One kid was on his phone. The teacher said, "You signed the contract. Hand it over," and the kid, without looking up, just shot back, "Contracts signed by a minor are not legally binding," and carried on texting. My ex had a long list of mental health issues, stemming from years of sexual abuse as a child. She has tried to kill herself several times, twice, in the 3 years we were together. Her parents admitted her into a local clinic. She spent 3 days there. I was so shocked at what qualified as help. It was more like glorified babysitting. She came out, feeling no better, but now hit with a $15,000 bill. $15,000 for 3 days of supervised TV and reading, with 2 sessions with a psychiatrist to evaluate her. That's not including overnight stay at hospital and ambulance. Insurance covered most, but not all. Oh, and the kicker, after her stay, the doctor prescribed her medication. $3,000 for her prescription. We thought the Walmart employee made a mistake. She ended up going to a different doctor, who thankfully helped her out big time. Mental health needs to be made more affordable. She was 19 at the time and already hit with a huge bill to add to her school loans and car payment. The red tape forcing a nurse friend of mine to release a child from the ER into the custody of his father who clearly put him there. His father killed him 2 days later. Was social services brought in first? Holy shit, I want to cry. Your friend must have been ducked up over that for a long time. A cop started lecturing me after 10:30 at night for being in the park. Park curfew was 11. He kept me there until after curfew, then gave me a ticket. That's entrapment if I recall correctly. Most of the time someone says it's entrapment. It's not even close. But this does sound like a legit entrapment case if OP was not free to leave. If he was free to leave and the cop just kept lecturing him until 11, then it would probably fall just shy of entrapment. In the case it's not entrapment, a good judge would see through the cop's bullshit. My best friend had 2 kids with his wife, and said wife then left him for her very rich boss. She and the boss wanted custody of the kids, so they used the boss' wealth to basically bankrupt my friend in legal battles. Every time the court was leaning towards a joint custody ruling, they'd introduce some new evidence or delaying tactic. They knew if they just kept dragging it out again and again, he'd run out of money and give up, which is eventually what happened. Now he has very limited access to his own kids, and such access he has is routinely denied, ignored by the ex-wife. Because what are you going to do about it? You want a legal battle like last time? I don't understand how people are so cruel. I've never encountered the kind of petty hate you see all the time in failed marriages anywhere else. Puts me off getting married or having kids. I'm sure my partner would never do something like that. But then I'm sure these guys thought the same thing too. A neighbor getting evicted for not paying her rent 1 month while she was in a coma in the hospital. The apartments had a super strict policy that you had to pay by the 5th, online, and that if a company didn't receive payment by the 13th, including fees, they would start the eviction process, and if everything, now including lawyer fees, wasn't paid by the 17th, you were out. Edit. Since apparently the way I worded it doesn't make sense to people, let me clarify. They would start the eviction process on the 13th by having a lawyer draw up the paperwork. If you had not paid up by the 17th, then you were past the point of no return and the legal stuff would be submitted to the courts, and even if you paid your back rent and fees, they would still go ahead with the eviction. Probably lived in a shitty area with a lot of bad tenants. But I don't know of anywhere the eviction process doesn't take months. Unless she was in a hotel or assisted living something. Georgia, the eviction process can take as little as 60 days. Source. I live in Atlanta and rent out an apartment in the back of my house. I've had to evict someone before. They were living there when we bought the house, but they never once paid rent. Yep, but not 12 days like OP is suggesting. I used to run a software company, had a digital agency hire me to work on a banking contract they had and were losing due to their rubbish offshore dev team. I go on site to the bank, save the contract, finish and deliver the software. Took over 3 months to do. Over this time the agency kept dragging out my invoices, paying small bits and pieces and always saying they would pay tomorrow. After the contract was done they declared bankruptcy, didn't pay me and bought the rights to trade that bank contract off of the debt collection agency. They started a new company and worked that contract. Since I spent 3 months working for free, it sank my business and I had to close it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.